Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first ever inaugural, if I'm saying that right, the inaugural episode of the Threat Brief, the Threat Breakdown. You can tell we're still working on the name there a little bit. The Threat Breakdown between Cyber Insecurity and BitLift Cybersecurity. So I'm super excited, super pumped to have you all here today. Thank you so very much for tuning in, whether you're here live or on the VOD. Let me give you a little bit of background. Let me set the usual ground rules that we've got going on, and then we will jump right into it. I'm super excited. Obviously, I'm super excited for this today. We've been working really hard to try to bring you continued content, continued valuable content, and that's why I'm really excited to be partnering with BitLift and with Jason and the team to really be able to bring you this threat breakdown. So let's kind of talk about it really quick. So first and foremost, my usual rules speech, right? We got moderators in chat. Moderators are here to keep chat free of racist, sexist, misogynistic, elitist, and otherwise toxic behavior. We have a zero tolerance for that in chat. Moderators are not here, however, to stifle chat by any means at all whatsoever. As a matter of fact, moderators are here to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate freely in chat, whatever platform you happen to be chatting at us from. We are streaming live across Twitch, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're also streaming across BitLift's channels as well. Make sure you go over there and show them a little bit of support on their YouTube channel. Give them a good, good follow, good subscribe over there on their YouTube channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. So with that being said, make sure you do ask questions at any point in time. This is supposed to be a threat brief. This is a little bit different than our typical interview format, meaning that the goal of this stream is for you to walk away from this threat brief with things that if you're working in a SOC, you can walk away with some actionable intelligence that you can go and execute at the operational or the tactical level. It means that we're going to get down to the nitty gritty, right? We're going to talk about IOCs. We're going to talk about TTPs. We're going to talk about things that are happening in the landscape today as seen by the eyes. I'm always talking about the SOC analysts and the frontline soldiers that exist. So you're going to be able to see a lot of that as it exists from those frontline soldiers in today's brief. I forgot to turn my volume off, and so I heard myself twice. With that being said, I do also want to remind you we do have our Discord up. Make sure you hop into Discord. Make sure you provide us some feedback in this, right? Make sure you provide us some feedback in our Discord as to what you like from this, what you thought was beneficial, what you thought wasn't beneficial. We got thick skin. We don't mind hearing about it, and we want to make this beneficial for you. Jason and I have partnered on this so that we can make it beneficial for you. Now, the last thing, we are doing a giveaway, and I just realized that I didn't bring my sample giveaway item up here for you, but the giveaway is live in Discord. So if you're listening to me across any of the platforms, you do have to be in Discord to participate in the giveaway, but inside the giveaways channel, the giveaway is live. We're going to give away one of those lap desk types of things. So it's like if you've seen it before on previous streams, it's like a little lap desk. It's about this big. It sits on your lap while you're sitting on the couch, chilling, or out on the patio. Although I don't know who's chilling on a patio when it's 20 degrees outside, but hey, more power to you, right? But either way, we're going to be giving away 3 of those to US-based people. And so go and participate in the giveaway. We'll announce the giveaway on Friday during Tea with Hacker. All right, with that being said, I think that's all the rules out of the way. I'm going to bring in my co-host, my partner in crime, the man with all the answers to your threat questions, comments, and concerns, the one, the only, the greatest and greatest, Jason Miller. Jason, welcome to the Threat Breakdown. Oh, you're on mute. You changed something. You're on mute. It wouldn't be a first stream without some audio issues. Also, Hannah, if you're listening, Chad is telling you to turn on the stream in YouTube. You haven't started the stream in YouTube yet, Hannah. Jason's... Quick, chat. Tell him what he needs to do. Tell him to check his TCP/IP settings. Tell him to check his mute button. His firewall's blocking it. Come on, chat. What's your best excuses of why he doesn't have sound in it? Oh, he's gonna leave and come back. All right, we'll put him back over there and we'll hang out over here while Jason goes and restarts his computer. Look at that. He left. He said, I'm gonna call my mom really quick. I'll be right back. He leaves and he calls his mom. The last thing I said to him before he goes off camera is don't change anything. Don't change anything. And we can totally see that did not happen. All right, he's back. Let's see if we bring him back in here now.
Do you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Jason. Welcome back to Cyber.
Oh, man. I tell you. The browser is never happy when you take the AirPods off and then put them back on again.
The last thing I said to you, I was just telling chat this, the last thing I said to you before you went to go call your mom was don't change anything.
I know. I should have listened to you.
That you're not the only one that has ever said that. You're not the only one. So I think that's awesome. That's exactly what we expect out of a first stream. So thank you very much for adhering to tradition on that. So let's start over again. Jason, the latest and greatest. Thank you so very much for joining us on the inaugural Threat Breakdown stream. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of our listeners today. Neal, you and I have been talking about having a threat briefing live stream for some time now, and it's been in our heart to sort of delay and make sure that the content that we're preparing for is like super quality, making sure that we're giving back to the cybersecurity community. And I'm just excited about this is the first one, and we're doing it and we're kicking it off, and it's January 2025. And I think that this is the year where we're actually going to get better at cybersecurity.
Oh, geez. You had my respect until you said that. All right.
I don't know,
All right. With that being said, you heard him chat. We put a lot of time and effort into this. We need your feedback. I can't stress this enough. Drop your feedback in chat. Drop your feedback in Discord. Jason, let's get into it because the first thing on your list that you wanted to talk about was phishing campaigns and specifically around the Axios, TTP. So TTP is tactics, techniques, and procedures. That's a long-winded way of saying the way in which attackers operate, for their attacks. And so I have to ask before we get into this, the Axios, kind of a paper was actually put out by Deepwatch back in July of last year talking about this attack. Why are we just now talking about it in January of 2025 as part of this threat breakdown?
So there's a couple of things I want to fill in here. You're absolutely right. Why are we talking about this pretty much close to 6 months later? The reality is that the paper was published. There was a couple people talking about it. There's several website links that we could even share that are out there talking about it. You could Google it. But the issue is that it was only seen a little bit of usage, and then it sort of went dormant for a while. And you see this with tactics. We see 0 days all the time, and some of the trouble that we see with it is that it doesn't get widely used immediately, and so people are like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to be a victim of this." But then, the thing that we have to keep in the forefront of our mind is criminal hackers are very patient, and so once 3, 4, 5, 6 months goes away, we're actually seeing this very active right now, and so that's why I wanted to sort of point it out. Not that everybody that is listening to this live stream would be like, oh, we're talking about phishing campaigns. Like we've been talking about phishing campaigns for years. It's that these are being highly successful and they're highly active at the moment. And so that is why I wanted to bring it up on the live stream today and make sure that people are super aware of it and some things that they can even do to protect themselves.
Okay. All right. So let's have an overview. What's kind of the attack overview, if you will, of these Axios phishing campaigns?
So I want to point out that they are essentially called a middleman attack, and what it means is that the criminal user here, the hacker, is attempting to get the real user to do something that they want them to do, and in this case, it is to give up their credentials by pushing them to a very real-looking Microsoft site If everybody is aware of the Microsoft login, it is typically if you go to login.microsoft.com and you're trying to log into your M365 account, it's a white page with a very centered, simple looking design. It makes it very easy to copy that, as well as the logo, the colors, the font, everything. So the criminal hacker is actually just pushing people to, there's a couple of write-ups on this, but like a Cloudflare or a site that is hosting it, gives up the credentials, and then moments later, it also prompts for the MFA code. You also then give it the MFA code, and now that criminal has the username, the password, and the MFA code to get into your Microsoft account. Now, you would think that right away they would be in your email inbox and doing all sorts of things like spraying the organization with emails. We have actually seen them use it for different purposes. We've actually started to seen it being used where they're actually doing a lot of discovery and understanding the organization now with those real creds. What type of user account do I have? Do I have a elevated user account, an admin account, and they're querying Active Directory with that. So now they have the creds. Now they can do discovery, and they can also gather information on that organization, which reduces the known compromised account situation. So now they have time to perform the discovery tactics, and all while the organization doesn't quite know that the account's compromised. I want to also point out one other thing here. I think everybody, if you're technical, you've probably seen where it says user agent, and then in a lot of cases, if it's being used by a browser or something, it would say like Mozilla or Google Chrome or something like that. And so that's what we're seeing inside of the log files is it looks like it is coming from the criminal is using the user agent and the version of the user agent to actually perform their actions.
Why?
So this is also
Why are they choosing that particular one instead of like a typical user agent we would see with normal browser types?
well, it's a lot easier to be unnoticed if they're using the user agent. It looks like it's a service account. It looks like if it's a browser. It looks like it's a piece of software acting as the user. So then it sort of flies underneath the radar because it's lesser of a chance that it's a real user. It's more of a software performing the actions. And so that's why they're using this. This methodology is pretty successful. Not a lot of organizations are looking for a compromised account via user agent, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So what you're seeing in the log files then, instead of normal user agent traffic like Safari or Chrome or Mozilla or anything like that, now you're seeing specific user agent for this Axios software basically to go into the log files.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you have to now look at and say, okay, well, was this user account, should this user account be showing up being used as user agent, right? I can tell you most SIMs out there are not flagging this kind of activity inside of their standard alarms and alerts that are written. We have created specific ones to look for this activity because now a user account that is compromised looks differently and acts differently than it was before. Most organizations set up service accounts to
Mm-hmm.
be used as service agents and being used as software. So want to just make sure that people like look at that and create their own alarms and alerts for it.
So real quick, just on that note, Jason, just Chad, as you're listening to Jason talk about this, obviously Jason and his team are cultivating indicators of compromise, IOCs, to kind of assist with this. Currently, the list of IOCs that his team has is rather large, so we couldn't set up a bot for it explicitly. Jason, you've agreed that if people will reach out to BitLift via the BitLift website and mention that they saw this stream, you would be more than happy to distribute IOCs to folks who reached out to you, correct?
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're really excited about is giving back to the cybersecurity community. And so we have IP addresses, we have domains, we have hash information. and we're willing to share that. So yeah, just real simply reach out on the website, fill out the contact us form. In the description, just say, "Hey, I watched the live stream and wanted to get the IOC's threat brief information," and we'll make sure that we get that over to you.
Just for chat's awareness, I'm working with Jason and the team to potentially put that stuff on GitHub so you guys can pull that stuff directly from GitHub. We're probably a bit out from that, but we are looking for a way to wider distribute a lot of those IOCs. But for now, as Jason mentioned, there's a lot of SIMs that don't have this type of data natively flagged as part of their alerting and detection strategy. And so, thanks, Jason, to you and your team for making these IOCs available. Outside of the IOCs, what are some, you mentioned that this is highly targeted around Microsoft environments and Microsoft, type of logins. What are some things that people can change from a Microsoft configuration perspective that would kind of help do some prevention against this as well?
Yeah, so in Microsoft, I am going to caveat if you have the licensing level, you do need the proper licensing level to apply this, but conditional access policies are highly suggested, highly recommended.
So real quick, as you talk about conditional access policies, right just then, Ryan Fields over on LinkedIn asked if anything could be added into conditional access policies that would block this type of attack. Can you dive into how that would work with conditional access policies?
Yeah, so we actually have a write-up again if you reach out to us on the IOC threat brief that we wrote up on this. We have suggested to many of our clients to implement this into their conditional access policies. They are particular geo-blocking for regions. We're seeing this activity primarily come out of Russia at the moment. If you're in Russia, I apologize. You're an ethical person, but there are some people in Russia that are not ethical and hacking United States-based people. So, but all that to say is yes, conditional access policies. We have specific information that you can plug into those conditional access policies. Primarily, they do go around IP addresses, domains, and regions that we want to block and prevent this activity, prevent logins from taking place from those areas.
If there are folks who operate in a geo region where they can't necessarily block an entire region, an entire country, are there other potential preventative mechanisms that they could use with conditional access policies that would be beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I would. One thing that we have, without getting into like a whole setup and implementation conversation, which is where my head goes, being an engineer myself, we highly recommend whether it's a VPN type of setup or it's another type of remote access setup into a jump area. We call it a jump box if you're using AWS or Microsoft Azure, and then perform your business activities from there, from that remote country. But what we still do is we tell people you really should block the activity, the sign-in activity in the conditional access for that country, but allow them to access Microsoft Azure or the jump box or their email from another method. Most people do implement a secure VPN technology, and you can secure that specifically because you can secure it down to the device and make sure that this software and these EDR agents are installed on this laptop, and this laptop has permission to access the environment. That is what we are seeing. We're giving that recommendation, and most organizations are moving towards that methodology today. It is the safer, I wouldn't call it the safest, but it's the safer route at this point.
Makes sense. Axios phishing threat. Thank you for that, Jason. We talked a lot about Microsoft Office 365 types of attacks. Does this mean that anybody who's on Google Workspaces is absolutely safe from these types of attacks?
No. As a matter of fact, if you had to rate it, we see there's 400 million users out in Microsoft M365. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head over in Google Gmail and Google G Suite, but it's a very high number as well. I'd probably say that they're close to neck and neck. But all that to say is in Google, we see a little lesser of this type of activity taking place, but we do still see it taking place. The biggest piece that I want to share with everybody is that we see the fake Google G Sheets and Google Docs
Mm.
being shared with people, saying, hey, this is the document that I meant to share with you. The name looks familiar. You click on it, and the first thing it wants you to do is authenticate yourself. And so you put in your email address and your Google G Suite password. The next form, it looks for your MFA code. You go ahead and plug in your MFA code. Now it's got all three pieces again, and they're off and running. And what I want to say is that the criminal behind the scenes here is using automation. So what you just did is you plugged in your username, your password, and your MFA code to a Google G Sheet behind the scenes that they're using. And once they've scraped that information from you, their automation now takes place. And they are automating the activity behind the scenes so it can be fast, so it can be real time. And the MFA code, if you think about it, it's going to reset every 30 seconds or so. So they have to act within 30 seconds if they want to do anything. And that's how we know without a shadow of a doubt, we're seeing logins take place literally moments later, seconds later, with the proper MFA code. And so we know that it's not a human being sitting behind the screen waiting for these codes to come in. We know that it's software automation behind the scenes executing behind the compromised account, their discovery tactics.
So I've been a victim, not me personally, but I've been part of organizations that have been victim to these types of attacks. You're not kidding. When that happens, it is almost instantaneous that the attacker is performing their second and third order actions on the target. Now, you'd mentioned in some cases you were seeing a ton of discovery. What else are you seeing from a second and third order effect once they get access to those accounts?
So we're seeing queries against their authentication methodologies, pulling other users, pulling their permissions. So these scripts are already pre-written. They want to know what permissions that account has that they have just gotten into, and whether they can use that account to go perform any other activities. If you think about this and you're an IT sysadmin, you have all these scripts probably pre-written yourself because you're running these scripts inside of your organization, maybe doing some updating of information or making sure that the right permissions in command line or CLI look correct that are in AD or that are in Okta. And if you think about this is all API driven. So the biggest components or the biggest next steps that we are seeing right after compromise is the querying and the pulling of information about that account and what that account has access to and what it doesn't. And then we see public scraping that I want to be careful with this because people can public scrape without notification very, very quickly. But what we see is that if that account has access to and permissions to go do something, or if it's got notes inside of Active Directory or Okta, that information gets transferred to the criminal as well. And then they all of a sudden know a whole lot about what this user account has, what level of permissions it has, whether it's a admin or not. And then it starts to go do other things. So automation is set up on their side pretty much step by step. If it's an admin account, go do this next step. If it's just an elevated account, go do this step. And then you see public scraping take place. And how we know that is because other software activity starts to happen that they know that. So DNS records are a big telling sign, public scraping. We see people really give away too much information inside of their public DNS. So you'll know right away if they're a Salesforce user or if they're a particular software because they'll put it in as like, hey, I'm salesforce.google.com. And now all of a sudden you know that Google is a user of Salesforce because they put the URL string or a forwarding email out or forwarding domain out there. And so public DNS is getting scraped and it's getting stitched together in this criminal's database, if you will. So all of a sudden, the automation now step by step is going in what they want to do, what do they want to execute, and where do they want to go.
So you'd mentioned you talked a little bit about attack surface management. What other, like when we talk generally speaking about threats to attack surfaces, what are you seeing out there as folks who are coming directly at organizations and really targeting those attack surfaces?
So what we see, and I'm glad that you brought it up. You had said it. So attack surface management is sort of this new category, the new buzzwords in the space, because what we have to think about is attack surface management isn't just software and technology. It's also our people. It's also our social media. It's also the things that are online that are queryable and downloadable um, from the public internet. So what we see, though, that is queryable and easily in like if I'm a criminal today, I can know what your DMARC, your DKIM, and your SPF records say.
Let's talk
I
about what
can
those
find out.
let's talk about what those are for those who may be hearing these words or these acronyms for the first time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So DMARC, DKIM, and SPF are all email records inside of your DNS. And you really want to make sure that your email is as secure as possible. So SPF, let's start there. Sender policy framework. If you need to, there's a step-by-step articles out there. If you want to set up SPF for your domain, you really should. And you should be setting your SPF records stringent.
Mm.
And what means is that you see a lot of P equals none, which means that they're allowing the emails that don't pass SPF records to still pass into your email. Those should be set to quarantine or delete, because if they're not coming from a legitimate domain and a legitimate IP address, you don't want the emails anyhow. Like if they're real legitimate businesses, they'll pass SPF.
Mm-hmm.
DMARC and DKIM are strings that help for security. You generate those inside the DNS record, and those are set up based on your provider. So you'd set up DMARC and DKIM inside of Google or wherever you're hosting your DNS email domain. You should set those up. Highly recommend them, all three of them. And this way here, your email, and I know we're going to get to this in a minute, but your email and the accounts that you have inside of your organization are what we call internally, it is the gateway drug for criminals to get them hooked into your environment. So we have to protect that attack surface, in which is very public. And we also have to look at it from, what does the criminal already know about me? What is the criminal able to publicly find out about me? And then how can I make sure that is as solid and it is like as tweaked and tuned as best possibly can be? So because that's your first initial line of defense. And then from there, you can then move on to, what does it look like once they do get the account, and once they do get inside of my environment? How can I make sure that I am taking the next steps? Because they will get inside of your environment. So now you then need to know. But I know I said a lot there on that.
Yeah. Let's break down a couple of those things, because I think as we talk about this from a threat breakdown perspective, right? So when we talk about the threat landscape currently, we talk about some of the attacks you're seeing. It's safe to say that you're seeing a lot of exploitation, and we use exploitation kind of in its relative sense for this, of the lack of security around the attack surface, specifically as it relates to email, specifically as it relates to DKIM, DMARC, and SPF. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. I mean, your DNS has to be set correctly. We just last week, and this is why I'm so passionate about this, is because an organization we've been working with for several years, we're not the sole service provider of the organization, but we do help out and advise. And we ran the tool on their environment. They made some changes, and we ran a tool on their public DNS and showed them that it was misconfigured. And on the phone call, the guy swore up and down, "Oh, no, that can't be right. That can't be right." I'm like, "Well, go ahead and share screen and let's log in." we logged in, and sure enough, I mean, the tool showed that it was misconfigured. And he was like, well, he goes, I know exactly what happened now. He goes, I thought that it was configured right, but I had given somebody a project a couple of weeks ago. They performed the project, and then they did not know how to set it correctly. And so they did the best that they could, but they never came back and told this gentleman that they needed a second set of eyes. And so this is what I could say to all that is listening is a second set of eyes in cybersecurity should never be grimaced at. We shouldn't condemn each other for that. We should look at it and make sure that, hey, I'm sort of 50-50 on this, and I need a second set of eyes. But the tool that is publicly scanning these environments quickly could have told a criminal the misconfiguration. And I'm glad that we caught it and helped protect this organization before a criminal got in.
So we've talked we've talked a little bit about a couple different phishing techniques. You talked about kind of this external attack surface and kind of these account compromises as being the gateway drug. Is that still, would you still classify that today as the predominant kind of threat that you will see to most organizations is account compromise even today? Over
100%.
0 days, over malware, account compromise.
Account compromise is still the top. It is the gateway drug, and I'm sorry to use that type of terminology here, but it's just something that really resonates and I think comes to mind with most people inside of the economy and the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to somebody that is not really familiar with cybersecurity or a technical person, they sure are familiar with, say, fentanyl, and fentanyl being a gateway drug to others. We need to sort of educate the people that are around us and tell them that, like, listen, account compromise, phishing email campaigns are the gateway drug to getting inside the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes the IT people and the security people are literally the defenders of hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands of accounts that exist inside of authentication systems. And all the criminal really needs is one account.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they need, is just one. We continue to find, so that is the gateway drug that leads to the other 0 days and the unpatched systems so we continue. You'd say, well, Active Directory itself has been around for at least 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean longer.
I've been in
longer.
Yeah. I was very conservative in my statement, but I started my career in 1996.
Yeah.
Active Directory from Microsoft was around in 1996. So there you go, right? I was wrong by saying 2 decades.
I was gonna say you look young, but you don't look that young. Okay, don't even.
But you know what I mean? It's like, so we continued to see 0 days in Microsoft Active Directory.
Mm-hmm.
And Microsoft Active Directory was built with the mindset this was an internal tool,
mm-hmm.
sat inside of the LAN, had big walls around it to protect it. Now it's very much in play as being so once the criminal gets inside, again, following the SOT pattern, it's the gateway drug. Once the criminal gets inside, now it can exploit vulnerabilities that are inside of either Microsoft Active Directory, Azure AD, and so on and so forth. So that is why it's so important to have continuously updated and patched systems, especially to your authentication methodology.
So speaking of vulnerabilities, are there any particular notable vulnerabilities? There's obviously, like, one of the things that I think cybersecurity gets inundated with when we talk about these types of threat briefs is there's ad nauseum a number of vulnerabilities that get released on a weekly basis to exploit systems and things like that. Do you have any that you're seeing, even as a post-compromise or, as an attempt to, beat the patch type of scenario, any that you're seeing relatively prevalently that's worth noting?
I didn't come with like a list of those today, and maybe I could follow up on the next live stream with a few of those, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I would say is that and this might be a wow moment, but as we're talking about this attack surface management and vulnerability management, because they are linked, we are seeing folks still leaving, say, like port 22, port 135, 389, 53, 445, other SMB ports.
I was gonna say let's put a wow factor behind that, because for those who don't know, like 135, 139, 445, that's the RPC, MSRPC ports for Microsoft, and it's the SMB, or basically the file sharing aspect of Microsoft systems. You're saying that you still see in organizations today, from an attack surface perspective, those ports open to the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're performing scans all the time. It's actually one of the little things that we do behind the scenes inside of our SOC team services is always scanning our customers' environments. And we even, when we're talking to a prospect, we're even doing some pre-initial scanning to know that what we're getting involved with, what are we getting into, because they're hiring us to protect their environment. Their environment is typically large.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not just, oh, I have one office and we have 100 workers or 500 workers, employees that are team members. It's typically like we have a footprint that's spread across AWS, Microsoft Azure, Salesforce.com. We're using DigitalOcean, and that is sort of the norm today. And what we see is people accidentally, or for lack of a better term, just ignorant to the fact that you cannot leave these ports open to the public internet. Even during, you say testing, well, I'm going to test this and make sure that it works. Well, then you can leave the port open for 10, 15 minutes, but you absolutely should close it after that. And, your team members should double check you.
Mm-hmm.
But that, if those ports are open, it is very easy. Now I don't need necessarily a compromised account. I can use a 0-day or an exploit against those SMB ports, against the Microsoft components that reside inside, because now the port is open.
Yeah.
And I can start interacting with that software application.
So go ahead, go for it.
I mean, it just goes downhill from there, because those software packages are just built on top of each other and on top of each other and on top of each other. And so you don't need necessarily a 0-day or a known vulnerability to exploit against it. Most of the time you can just start interacting with it and find the exploit yourself.
Yeah. What I would argue too is, like, you don't need somebody like Jason to scan your own attack surface, right? There are free vulnerability scanners like OpenVAS. You can go to census.io, you can go to Shodan. All of these tools help you kind of get a lead start on checking that attack surface. You could do that today. Those don't, obviously, make sure you have permission before you do anything, the typical disclaimer and stuff like that. But those are not magic things that require specialty to do.
Right. And I would even recommend that you're doing these types of scans on your environment that you're managing and securing on a daily and weekly basis. And here's why. You're probably not the only person that's showing up to the organization making changes that day or that week. You could have other team members that are performing work, and what you guys should be doing is trying to look out for one another and say, hey, I realize that you were working on this project on Monday. You left early because you had a personal problem, or not a problem, but a personal need to leave early. And then on Wednesday, I ran a scan and noticed this port is still open, or this is still taking place on the public side. Are we good to close this now? Right. But if you don't have that, somebody helping and you guys looking over each other's shoulder, helping out one another, this can go unnoticed. And then next thing you know, next month you're popped and you're having a really bad day, bad week.
So let's get back to some of the automation stuff. Curious Spectre in chat, and you talked about some of the automation that adversaries have, post account compromise to execute on the objective. How prevalent do you see attackers have automation to execute post-exploitation activity? And does that make threat detection and response harder for teams?
It Yes and no. And what I mean by that is threat detection is always a moving target per se, but there is very good ways of detecting the activity that you are looking for.
Mhm.
Um, there's, I'm not going to be bashful about saying we use a SIM and we use other tools as well. We heavily rely on the SIM for log management, but we also utilize other tools to help us detect methodologies because a SIM is not an end-all be-all tool.
Mhm.
Um, and so it is in some cases difficult to always detect um, everything underneath the sun. But the activity that you're looking for and that is most prevalent is detectable. You just need to know what you're looking at,
Mhm.
and you maybe even need to put on a criminal mindset a little bit. Like, if I had this information, what would my next steps be?
Mhm.
Because you might not always see a compromised account right away. You might see the precursor activity that happens before the account's compromised. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I answering your question,
You are,
Neal?
but I want to follow up with that, right? Because when we talk about it from your perspective, or from a SOX perspective, or from a security analyst perspective, what are you doing for automation? How do you see automation's role in the counter defense, if you will, of neutralizing a threat, to kind of
Yeah.
combat what an adversary is using for automation? And how can folks walk away from this and be thinking about automation in a practical way today?
Yeah. So to give you an example, I've got two right off the top of my head that in BitLift Air, and you could write these yourself as well, but in our product, we've wrote what's called automated incident response modules. And those Air modules help in the case where an account compromise, you need to kill that account in seconds. And so we have detection methodologies that tell us 100% without a shadow of a doubt this account's compromised. So then it is linked and it triggers a Air module, which communicates with the Microsoft Graph API or the Google G Suite or Okta or OneLogin, whatever you're using for authentication, and remediates that account so it's no longer compromised. Logs the account out forcefully, resets the password, and then disables the account for further instruction. Right. That has to be automated. And I would recommend, if you don't have our product or you don't have an automation product out there, that you start looking at something that does fit your needs, because these criminals are using automation against you. And so you are going to have to use automation to defend yourself going forward if you're not already. The other one that I want to touch on is, we see when we're talking about the phishing and the compromised accounts, those phishing emails, we're seeing the same email or a variation of the email getting delivered to multiple users inside the same organization. And so what is also needed is to quickly identify that, detect it, but then remediate those emails out of the inboxes before literally hundreds or thousands of users start clicking on it. Because we have seen this where, like, hundreds of accounts get popped in less than 5 minutes. And it's because they all received that email that was either the same or a variant. It looked very good using the Microsoft logo. And the team member, the employee, knows that they use Microsoft M365, and so they're used to it. And so just out of like muscle memory, they click on it, perform the actions, and then they get to an error page. They get to a page at the end that they're like, "Oh man, something must have happened." They just click out of it and move along with their business. And then next thing you know, there's hundreds of accounts that are compromised behind the scenes. That team member typically won't know whether their account's compromised. They don't have the detection methodology that
Yeah.
the IT team or the security team is supposed to.
I think what's also important here, chat, and Jason, I want to reiterate what you'd said. The Graph API makes this possible. You don't have to spend an exorbitant amount on a SOAR tool. You don't have to spend an exorbitant amount on any specific tool. If you have the chops, Chad, if you've got, the wherewithal to program, one of the things that I love doing this with Jason is, Jason has built a lot of these tools himself for BitLift and for the team there. They're very innovative in that regard. And so I want to share that experience with you guys as well so that you can understand, this is something you don't have to spend a lot of money on to accomplish. If you're in a small shop, if you're in an SMB, if you've got the capability to write this, you can do this with the Graph API.
Yeah, Microsoft offers 5 different APIs. Now, they don't all have the exact same capabilities, but the Microsoft Graph API is pretty powerful. And then you can move into using PowerShell with the Exchange portion of it as well. So, if you're an IT admin and PowerShell, you can interact with Exchange Online and perform actions. Now, just know the whole reason why we built BitLift Air as a product is because our security analysts were saying, gosh, we started off in the trenches, with the manual labor, running a script at a time. And we were like, holy smokes, this is not scalable. Mm-hmm. And so years ago, BitLift Air was birthed because of that. And it was really born and developed from security analyst perspective. And what I mean by that is you have to take, if you're a security analyst listening to this, you have to take, how do I want to defend the organization? What do I need to speak to? And what do I need to speak to quickly in order to defend the organization? And that's what I would impress upon you, is to think about that. Think about that logical flow diagram and what is taking place and how do I need to interact with it.
That sounds like a future threat breakdown conversation for you and I to have, is maybe what a sample playbook or something like that could look like for people to see.
Yeah, would happy to be shared with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. From Chad, says not having email security, for example, like Mimecast, you're already vulnerable. I think before you weigh in on this, Jason, I think I'd like weigh on this too. Is I think if I like to look at things in terms of crawl, walk, run, right? Mimecast, Proofpoint, P5 licensing, the old E5 licensing, or P3, whatever it is now for Microsoft, right? I think those can be a cost inhibitor for some folks to spend on security, especially Mimecast and Proofpoint. Like I've done 2 Proofpoint deployments. I've known people that work at Mimecast. They are amazing tools. I would swear by them, but they are cost prohibitive for a lot of organizations. I think what I like about Jason's methodology is you have access to Graph APIs, you have access to PowerShell. There's a lot that you can do self-hosted, self-funded in the same regard.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, Neal, there on that, is that you need tools. You just need to decide whether you want to buy tools. Mm-hmm. Can you buy tools? Or do you need to build your own set of tools internally? The reason why I would caution some organizations from building their own tools internally is because you're going to have to maintain them.
Yes.
So I love people that are inspired to build their own tools. Go do it.
Yes.
Just know that as Microsoft updates the Graph API and they make changes to M365, you are going to have to maintain all of your own scripts. You're going to have to probably get into a Git repo. You're going to have to, you
got to be a little bit of a developer in that regard.
You have to be a little bit of a developer, and you're also going to have to know, like, when my code stops working, I now have to troubleshoot it, figure out what changed, all while a criminal may be active in your environment. So, yes. So just know what you're biting off. Yes. Know what you're about ready to bite off and chew on.
Absolutely. Jason, we're coming up on top of the hour. I'll make a last call for questions across the chats if anybody wants to. I want to do a couple really quick reminders, Jason. First reminder to everybody, make sure you're in Discord, make sure you're in the giveaway channel so that we can get you your prizes. I want to thank you, Jason. You and Hannah have been amazing to work with in terms of facilitating that, and thank you for that. Also, as a reminder in chat, please give Jason and I feedback. You can tell we've been ideating on this for over a year. We're very excited to present this to you, and we want to make it what you want. Our goal here, as you're looking at this, is to bring you more tactical and operational based, threat, content, down to indicators of compromise. We've got plans to try to get those to you in the meantime. But Jason, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I'd love to share just a couple of key takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely.
One is you can train your users until you're blue in the face. You could have just had a training yesterday or last week, and we see and hear this. People hold tabletop roundtable discussions, but I'm just letting you know that the criminal hackers are so good. They're using logos from Microsoft and Google. The colors. I mean, people are still falling for the simplest things, like the phishing emails and other things. So when you think about this, automation is key to have inside of your toolkit or your tool belt. Also use AI. I would say that AI in whether it's ChatGPT or Grok or your favorite AI tool, sort of ask it questions, play with it a little bit, and get it to tell you, hey, what are some of the latest vulnerabilities on such and such? Maybe where your environment is more susceptible than it's not. So maybe use an AI tool to help you identify what are some of the latest vulnerabilities, that type of thing. And then I wanted to share with everybody, if you want some information from us, whether it's the IOCs for threat briefing, or if you want to chat with one of our security analysts inside of our SOC team, feel free to go to the website. We're happy to give you just a free consultation and share with you. Go to the website, fill out our contact us form, just put in the notes that you just want to talk to a security analyst that you've seen in the live stream. And we're happy to chat with you and sort of point you in the right direction on some things that we talked about here today.
Thanks for that, Jason. I want to reiterate for folks, right? This is not a sales pitch by Jason. If you mention that you saw it on the stream, free consultation from the BitLift team. They'll be more than happy to help you out and push you in the right direction. That's one of the things that I think is really awesome about Jason's team and whatnot, is they really truly do want to do awesome stuff for you guys. And so if you heard anything, if it sounds suspicious, if you sound like something that you need more information from, please reach out to Jason. Really quick, it looks like Curious has got how to do that from the website. You want to just reiterate that one more time on the website?
Yeah, if you just go to bitlift.com, bitlyft.com, and there's just a contact us form. Whether you click get a quote or a contact us form, our people are aware that we are doing the live stream. And if you say just, hey, I watched the live stream and I want to get the IOC's information, or talk to a security analyst, they'll know what you want and are looking for, and we'll get you pointed to one of our security team members and inside of our SOC to chat with.
Awesome.
It's obviously going to be sort of limited seats. Like, we're probably not capable of taking thousands of calls, but if you
get thousands of calls from this live stream, you and I may be renegotiating our contract.
There's
I'm
a large
kidding.
Community out there,
Yeah. So everybody, we're gonna wrap up here soon, but I want to remind everybody, we're gonna do this again in 2 weeks, Jason.
Yes, we are.
And then 2 weeks after that, and then 2 weeks after that.
Threats will be out there the threats are new every week.
Yeah, every week. And so we want to bring this to you every 2 weeks. And so, Jason, with that, we're going to say goodbye to the community. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you on Friday. I'll see y'all on Friday for Tea with a Hacker, but we'll do a threat brief again in 2 weeks and we'll see y'all later.